right, so we've got a ton of articles you sent in about India's music scene, and
Yeah.
it really seems like something's happening there. It's like,
Big time, yeah. And it's all kind of coming to a head with all this stuff about Coldplay's concert in Ahmedabad.
oh yeah, for sure. 13 million people trying to get tickets.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some people are even calling it Coldplay chaos.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about the website crashing,
Oh, can you imagine? Like, you're finally about to get those tickets, and boom, the site just dies.
and then some people figured out how to, like, jump the queue.
Oh, yeah, finding that button hidden in the website code, I mean, that's clever, but it just shows you how crazy things work.
But you have to give Book My Show credit for a few things.
Yeah.
They had that live queue and seat tracker, so at least you knew where you were in line.
Right. It's like that whole psychology thing about how if you keep people engaged, the wait feels shorter, but this whole Coldplay ticket thing really tells you something about India's music scene. You know.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, 13 million people all trying to see a Western band. That's not just a coincidence, it's a sign of something bigger.
Yeah, like, it feels like everyone's going to India these days. Ed Sheeran, Dua Lipa. It's like the place to be.
And the articles talk about how it's all tied to this huge youth population in India.
Right, a whole generation growing up with global music and culture.
Exactly, and they want to experience it firsthand. And India's music industry is supposed to just explode in the next few years.
So from a business perspective, it makes total sense for these artists to go there.
Oh, totally. But I think it's more than just about the money.
Yeah.
It's like a cultural exchange, too. Indian fans are finally able to see these artists without having to travel across the world.
And it's not like they're not familiar with Western music. I mean, Ed Sheeran's album Divide has been on India's Spotify charts for like 4 years straight.
Wow.
So there's definitely a dedicated fan base already. But what about the Indian artists, though?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. It's kind of a double-edged sword for local musicians.
In what way?
Well, on the one hand, it puts India's music scene on the map, globally.
Right, because these big names performing there bring attention to the country and its talent.
Exactly. But then again, it might be tough for new Indian artists to make a name for themselves when they're competing with these global superstars.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And the articles talk about how important it is to strike a balance, to support both the international collaborations and the local artists.
So how do you do that?
Well, one suggestion was to have Indian artists open for these big concerts.
Oh, I like that. Gives them a chance to perform for a huge audience and learn from some of the best.
Totally. Like, imagine being a young musician in India and getting to open for Coldplay or Dua Lipa.
That's a pretty incredible opportunity.
Definitely. But speaking of opportunity, all these international acts raise another issue,
What's that?
Infrastructure. Does India even have enough venues to handle all these huge concerts?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, remember that article about Lollapalooza being held at a horse racing track?
Oh, yeah. That was wild.
They had to get creative because there just weren't any other venues big enough.
And relying on sports stadiums isn't ideal either.
No, not really. Cricket season can mess up scheduling, and those stadiums aren't really built for music. So yeah, building better infrastructure is key. It's not just about convenience, it's about creating spaces where music can actually thrive.
Right. It sends a message that India is serious about its place in the global music scene.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like this influx of international stars is a mixed bag.
It is. There are tons of opportunities, but also challenges.
For sure.
And it raises some important questions about India's own musical identity.
Like, will Indian music get lost in all of this?
Yeah, it's something to think about for sure. It's a tough question. But I think it's about finding a way to embrace global music without forgetting India's own amazing musical heritage.
Right. It shouldn't be about choosing one or the other. It's about creating a space where different genres and traditions can exist together, even influence each other.
Exactly. It's like a musical tapestry, each thread adding to the whole. And that tapestry isn't just made by artists, it's made by fans, too.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. The choices we make as listeners, the music we support, the concerts we go to, it all shapes India's music scene.
Absolutely. And speaking of choices, those articles also brought up ticket accessibility. Even if there are more venues, can the average Indian fan afford to see these big international acts?
That's a great point. Ticket prices can be really expensive.
Yeah.
And if only a small group of people can afford them, it creates this kind of exclusivity.
Yeah, and that goes against the whole idea of cultural exchange.
Exactly.
It's important to make sure these concerts are accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy. Maybe that means trying different pricing models or offering discounts for students.
Yeah, there are definitely ways to get creative and make it more inclusive.
Yeah.
But we can't forget the incredible opportunities that come with these international stars.
Right.
For Indian artists, this is a chance to connect with and learn from some of the biggest names in the business.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine being a young musician in India, and suddenly you have access to workshops, master classes, even collaborations with your idols. That's huge.
Just like a fast track to the global stage.
Totally. And it could even help improve the quality of music production in India.
Oh yeah, so
Well, the articles mentioned how these international acts bring their own sound engineers and production teams. They can share their expertise with the local professionals.
right, so it's like knowledge transfer, raising the bar for everyone.
Exactly. And don't forget the economic boost these concerts bring. More concerts mean more tourism, more jobs, more money for the whole industry.
It's like a ripple effect that benefits the entire country.
For sure. And it creates a buzz around India's music scene that could attract even more talent and investment. But even with all this excitement, I keep coming back to this question. How do we make sure India's unique musical identity doesn't get lost in this globalized world?
It's a question a lot of people are asking, I think. It's not about rejecting outside influences. It's about finding a way to integrate them without losing the essence of what makes Indian music so special.
Yeah, I agree. Think about Indian classical music. It's evolved over centuries, incorporating elements from different regions and cultures while still keeping its distinct character.
And that adaptability is key. We need to encourage an environment where experimentation and fusion are celebrated, where artists can draw inspiration from both traditional and contemporary sources.
Right. It's about pushing boundaries, creating something new and exciting while still respecting the roots of Indian music.
The articles mention some cool examples of this fusion already. Like, there are more and more electronic dance music producers using traditional Indian instruments and vocals in their tracks.
Oh, yeah, I've heard some of that stuff. It's amazing. Like a conversation between the past and the present.
And that's what's so exciting about all of this. We don't know what the future holds, but we know Indian music will continue to surprise us.
Definitely. It's a dynamic and vibrant scene full of potential. And it's a scene that's more and more connected to the global music landscape.
So it sounds like this global music phenomenon in India is this complex thing with opportunity and challenges and a deep love for music.
It is. It's a story that's still being written, and we'll be watching closely.
We've covered a lot today, but we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What do you think about this global music takeover? What excites you and what worries you?
Are you a fan of international music? Would you travel to India to see your favorite artist?
And how do you think we can make sure India's unique musical identity thrives in this globalized world?
Let us know in the comments. We want to hear your thoughts. This is a topic that deserves our attention and some serious discussion. It really feels like we're at like a turning point, you know? It's not just about concerts and tickets anymore.
Right. It's about India's role in the global music scene.
Exactly. It's about influence. Will India just follow global music trends, or will it help shape those trends? Will it find its own unique voice?
And the articles talked about this idea of cultural appropriation.
Uh-huh.
As these collaborations between Indian and Western artists happen more and more, how do we make sure it's done respectfully? So it's a real exchange, not just one culture taking over.
That's so important. It's not just about using sounds or looks from another culture. It's about understanding the meaning behind them, the history, the context.
One article talked about creating spaces for dialogue, where artists and cultural experts and even fans can talk about these issues of exchange and appropriation.
I think that's a great idea. Open communication is key. It's about building understanding not just between cultures, but between people.
And it's not just up to the artists, right?
No way.
We as listeners have a responsibility too. We need to be more thoughtful about the music we listen to. Like, where did it come from? What's the story behind it?
We need to really listen, not just hear the music, but understand it.
Right, like the difference between just listening to a song and really feeling it.
Exactly. And that kind of deep listening can help us appreciate different cultures and musical traditions. It can open our minds.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into India's music scene, we're left with this feeling of excitement and hope, but also some caution.
Yeah, there are challenges. But there's also this huge opportunity for India to become a real leader in global music.
It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
where tradition meets innovation, where local voices mix with global influences to make something new and amazing.
And maybe this is just the beginning, a whole new era of music where boundaries disappear and musical traditions from all over the world blend together.
What an amazing thought. So here's something to think about. If you were an artist today, what kind of music would you create? How would you combine your own culture with the sounds of other traditions? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And until next time, keep exploring, keep listening, and keep the music playing.